What is up, YouTube? Welcome to PanFro Games. In today's video, we're going to go over the cut content of Pokemon X and Y, and this is including beta Pokemon that we have never seen before, which is incredibly awesome. We even have some old Mega designs and much more. And of course, guys, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. I really appreciate it. Consider supporting the channel by joining PanFam by hitting that join channel member button below. So I do want to start off with probably the biggest actual piece of cut content is that, yes, South Kalos was supposed to actually be a thing, and unfortunately, we did not get that. So yes, X and Y is an incomplete game. We were supposed to get a whole nother third of the game that was either going to be part of the base game, was going to supposed to be a DLC update, or even supposed to be an X and Y 2. There's a lot of different routes they could have gone with this, but yes, we did miss out, and hopefully Pokemon Legends ZA can rectify some of this cut content that we missed out in Pokemon X and Y. Now, Furfurou is actually the very first Pokemon ever created for Pokemon X and Y, and this is the very first look at Furfurou, and is a shaved version of it. So that's very interesting that Furfurou was literally the first thing that they thought of when they were creating Pokemon X and Y. And now we have a bunch of other beta designs. So let's going in. Here's our very first look at Mega Mewtwo. He still very much looks like Frieza in a lot of ways, but I do like what we got instead of this personally. And then we have this never before seen chameleon Pokemon. Now, we don't know what the typing of this is, but I'm going to think it's going to look like a dragon poison type Pokemon. It looks really cool. I like how the tail sort of scrolls into itself. Sort of reminds me of like a Hisuian Gudra in a way because of like the snail shell aspect to it, even though this is obviously its tail folding into itself. But this is a very cool design. I would love to see a chameleon Pokemon in a future Pokemon project. And then our very first look at what Mega Blastoise could have been. So Mega Blastoise was always supposed to have the triple cannon, but I'm not gonna lie, I actually like this design for Mega Blastoise a lot more than what we got. I think the mustache is actually super sick, and I just like how, I don't know, he looks a lot more edgy than what we got. I think the Mega Blastoise that we get is honestly a little bit derpy. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I really like the, they were trying to make like this tortoise, you know, have like its arms out to protect itself while also be able to shoot guns out. I think this is a super fire design. I'd much rather have this than what we got at the end of the day. Now, we have our very first look at the Florges line. So we got Flabébé and Floette, and they're very cute. I'm not gonna lie, I think these two are very cute. I would actually say I think they're better than what we got at the end of the day as well. Yeah, they're not as flower-like, but they still got flower aspects to them, and I think I like these a little bit more at the end of the day. And this was supposed to be some cut Pokemon that potentially might have actually been living within the ultimate weapon that could have been like the final boss of the game in a way. But this ended up being cut contact. It's supposed to somehow actually relate to Pokereus as a virus. So this is like super interesting, but this is mostly just a scrapped idea that didn't end up being anything in Pokemon X and Y in general. Now, we have another cut Pokemon. It's some sort of mantis, and I think this thing is raw AF. I mean, this is definitely a bug. It sort of honestly looks like Golisopod in some way, especially like the first form is a little bit like a Wimpod. But this is definitely some sort of like jumping mantis, and it has like a huge stinger. So I don't know, maybe this thing is like bug dark. It's sort of similar to like low kicks in a lot of way too, considering it sort of has like a little bit of a cricket aspect to it as well. But this thing is absolutely fire, and I would love to see this thing actually become a real Pokemon. And then we get original Noibat, how it actually looks. And then Mega Venusaur. Now, Mega Venusaur is one of the Pokemon that actually has a lot of different cut Mega designs. They really couldn't figure out how to actually do it, but I really like this sort of like Japanese-esque like sage toad look to it. Sort of feels like this thing would come out of Naruto, honestly, and I'm such a big fan of this design in general. Now, we actually have this thing translated. It's supposedly called Gangoro is the first form, and the second form is Mizu Mantis. So reading from this, breathes from the tip of his long tail by putting the tail out in the water and taking breath. It allows long-term underwater activities. So this probably would have been water bug then. So this is literally Golisopod. This is just essentially this thing turned into what we get in Gen 7 with Golisopod. but I'd rather have this, honestly. Attack fish Pokemon hidden in the shade of rocks and water. It looks like goggles. It does not keep its prey away with its stinging Kama. Interesting. This is a super interesting design, doc, for sure. And of course, we got more. So this is another look at what we could have gotten for Mega Venusaur. They went with a big bulb here on it, which is interesting considering, you know, it flowers up and then it bulbs back up. I'm not a big fan of this design per se, but I do think it's very interesting. And then our very first look at what Mega Charizard could have been. Now, this looks maybe more like the X variant of Mega Charizard. And I think this is super interesting. The fire vents on its tail is super crazy. And it's got like this extra like X-Ghost like skeleton to it. You know, this like super like rock looking aspect to it. That's very interesting. And then another look at Mega Blastoise. And I think this is another fire design for Mega Blastoise, honestly. Just getting the additional cannons on the back is pretty sick. I'm a big fan of the tail. I think we should bring back the War Turtle tail. This is super sick. I think we need a tail, and the mustache I'm a big fan of on Blastoise. Another great design that I think would have been better than the final product at the end of the day. And now we actually have the first form of the chameleon Pokemon. Definitely looks like a poison type. Like, obviously that's its tail, but it's definitely a poison type. It has like the colors, and it just feels like it'll be poisoned and maybe became like Poison Dragon. Another look at Mega Charizard. This is definitely more similar to the Y variant. I actually really like how dragony this thing looks, though. It's very like, it looks like something from Monster Hunter. And once again, we get the flame vents on it, on its neck. That's very interesting too. And then we get our very first look at a Flamingo Pokemon. Now, we obviously got Flamigo in Gen 9, so this is probably going to be what sets off the Flamingo Pokemon in Game Freak. So this is probably our very first look at what Flamigo could have been. And I sort of like it. It actually looks really cool. I sort of like this more than Flamigo because it has a little bit more design aspects to it. And I really like, it's like really pretty colors on it. So I think this is a pretty sick design in general. Now we have even more to look at for Mega Charizard. This is definitely the X variant. You can see where the colors are going. This color here is definitely a lot similar to the Mega Charizard X that we know. And once again, we get the flame vents. This is super interesting. And then we have whatever this thing is. This is some sort of Pokemon. I have no idea. And our very first look at Florges. Now, I'm not a big fan of this thing, how it looks, but to be fair, I'm not a really big fan of Florges in general, but it is very interesting for sure. And then we get this incredibly sick cassowary that was cut. This thing is super sick. We actually have a translated version of this Pokemon. It's a fire-eating bird. It is nocturnal, and is a 2-stage evolution. The first evolution, the beak extends all the way to its head. The first evolution, it will come near you if you have a bonfire at night. The more you eat, the bigger the bags get. So that's super interesting. So this is probably fire flying, or maybe dark fire, or something like that. This is super cool. It uses the fire stored in its body to heat up the skull, the dark part, and then headbutts his opponent. So probably a physical attacker. Fan the wind and start a fire. Yeah, this is probably a flying fire Pokemon. And, you know, this is also the generation where we get Talonflame. So maybe this was maybe for Talonflame. They're like, well, we want a fire flying Pokemon, but this doesn't really fit a Route 1 bird that ends up with Fletchling Bees. So they probably cut this for Talonflame at the end of the day. I'm not gonna lie, I love Talonflame, but this thing's super sick. I wish we could have had both. Maybe in a future gen, we can get a cassowary Pokemon, because that would be pretty damn metal. We have another cut Pokemon. This sort of looks like a berry. It looks like he's sort of in a little jumpsuit, though, this first form. And this second form sort of reminds me of a Breloom in a way. Not sure what type this would be, but it seems to be maybe a ground grass type, just because it looks like a sprout. It's like a peanut. Oh, this is totally a peanut. This is a grass ground type for sure. But this is like a peanut, and then it grows up and becomes a flower. Sort of looks like a grass ground variant of Breloom to me. This is actually super dope. I don't know what this thing is called, but I'm a big fan of it. That's super awesome. And then, fun fact, Noibat was actually supposed to be the Vivillon of Pokemon X and Y. So it was going to come in all these different colors, but instead we got Vivillon. I'd rather had the Noibat, I'm not going to lie. Our first very look at the Pikachu Bella form, which is super interesting too. I've never been too much of a fan of these. And then for now we have concepts. So Pokemon X and Y, this was like the original concept of the story. And the story of Pokemon X and Y is life and death. And it's supposed to be based on like Da Vinci, which is very cool. We actually get art of the ultimate weapon actually being used and the components of it. The ultimate weapon was actually supposed to have a much more an expanded role in the story, but unfortunately that was cut as well. There is the Rhyhorn riding in this game, and it apparently was supposed to become a multiplayer mini game that you could verse other people in. It was supposed to be a whole racing saga as well, which is pretty interesting. And another fun fact, AZ was originally going to be the leader of Team Flare, but he wanted to kill everyone and had his descendants to rule the world. So Lysandria did not exist at this time. AZ was supposed to be the big bad, but then eventually he gets changed towards the end of production. And there's even more X and Y features. Players could create their own original gyms and share them online. That is a feature I would love to see in a future Pokemon game. Having your own gym and then even being your own gym leader would be sick. And then other people can try to beat those gyms. Once a gym is conquered, a gym leader, an NPC version of a player can join the player's gym. The gym leader can be placed as a member of their original gym. This would have been such a sick feature. I hope they add this in the future of a Pokemon game. And Game Freak was originally going to have a hatching facility for X and Y where you can give them eggs and hatch them all at once. We still need this feature in a future Pokemon game. I want to be able to mass egg hatch so badly. Seriously, I hate running around. It's not fun. Let us mass production our eggs. And lastly, looking through the code, there was supposed to be a Mew 3 and a Mew 4 and a potential Mega Jinx, as we talked about in a previous video, but there are no cut Megas, so Mega Jinx is the only cut Mega, but there was potentially going to be other Mew forms. And there was actually supposed to be another mythical Pokemon, but it never came to fruition. But there we have it, guys. That is a lot of news to come over. But man, Pokemon X and Y, there was a lot of great cut content. Hopefully Pokemon Legends ZA delivers on some of this cut content, or maybe an X and Y 2 one day. But this gets me really excited, and those cut Pokemon are absolutely fire, and I would love to see some of them, especially that Cassowary and the Mantis, make a return. And of course, guys, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. I really appreciate it. Catch you guys next time. Peace out, and have a good one.